Black Widow managed to answer a lot of questions in regards to what happened in the years leading up to and after the events of Avengers 2 Avengers movies back to back. Namely, where did Black Widow get her vest from? And what if Ray Winston but Russian? One question though that was never definitively answered was whether or not you left a like right now on this video. And that's entirely up to you. Only you can answer that. But another question is whether the Red Guardian's tales, boasting of crossing paths and shields and fists with Captain America, were in fact true. Now, at first glance, no, it's not possible. And that is highlighted in the movie.
Captain America was still frozen in ice then.
By the way, I hope you've seen it. Spoiler alert. His encounter is said to take place in the year 1984, and Steve Rogers was frozen from 1945 to 2011. However, his insistence that this event took place had me thinking, well, maybe he's telling the truth. And if so, when? Well, 1984. But also, if so, how? Well, there are a number of potential explanations. Let's go through them. 1, he fought Captain America, but not the Captain America. Not every single second of the MCU has been accounted for, but we know as of recently that the role of Captain America has been taken on by a handful of others. Isaiah Bradley, unofficially in the 1950s, murderer turned, I guess he's alright guy, John Walker, and then Sam the Birdman Wilson. So it's possible that someone else took on the role in the 80s for a time, or even as a one-off, and it's just not widely known at this point. And that's the Captain America he was talking about, confusing the two. Speaking of two, it was the Steve Rogers as a result of time travel. He's been known to engage in a spot of time travel from time to time. And perhaps in returning the Infinity Stones, he got sidetracked and ended up in the 80s for a red-hot Russian minute, having the two go head-to-head. 3, it was Steve Rogers, but an older Steve Rogers. So after heading back to the 40s to reunite with Peggy Carter so he could live out his life, perhaps he was engaging in covert missions for S.H.I.E.L.D. or himself, or maybe he didn't. I don't know. Then, a bit shy of 4 decades later, in 1984, he encountered the Red Guardian. This, of course, would place him in his 70s. So sure, he wouldn't be at his best physically, but the Super Soldier Serum is known to prolong life and also allow a person to maintain an abnormally high level of physical strength. So again, this is a possibility. Number 4, however, the Russo brothers, directors of some Avengers movies and some Captain America movies, have stated that Steve Rogers lived out most of his remaining years in a parallel reality, very much like the regular MCU timeline, with a parallel reality Peggy Carter. Then, in extreme old age, he jumped back to his regular universe to hand over the shield. Now, some dispute this theory. I don't. I think it's correct. But if this is the case, that would mean that if scenario 3 was to be believed, that means the version of Steve Rogers who fought Red Guardian would be a different version, jumping over from his alternate reality timeline to the regular MCU timeline, to, I guess, also live a life with Peggy Carter. I mean, she mentioned that she has a husband. I don't know. Look, if this doesn't make sense, don't even worry about it. I thought about it. It makes enough sense. And here's a picture. I drew this picture. Pause it. Look at the picture. Number 5. This is the theory that it could have been any number of the parallel dimension versions of Steve Rogers that exist in the multiverse, hopping on over for whatever reason. And whatever version of Steve Rogers this was, Hydra Cap, Catwolf, Colonial Captain America, Ape Captain America. This guy, he just happened to run into the Red Guardian. I don't think that he would have been sent to fight him specifically because he's not that important of a character, quite frankly, but it is possible that they just happen to come across each other. Also, and I think this is worth a mention, there's a moment in Black Widow where Red Guardian asks her whether Steve Rogers ever mentioned him.
Did he talk to you about me? Trading more stuff.
Who? What are you talking about?
Captain America.
She kind of shrugs it off, but I would also say this is because there's very little chance he would have mentioned it. Because even if the regular version of Steve Rogers did encounter him, it would have been an event that had yet to happen in his timeline, because chronologically, it was not an event in his past, but was something that had yet to take place, which would basically mean that he'd have no idea what he was talking about. Now, if you've got another explanation, I'd love to hear it. Even if that explanation is just, he made it up. I don't know. Because maybe he did. Now, this wasn't mentioned up top, but surprise bonus segment. I'd like to get into the Red Guardian's abilities and how they compare to that of Captain America. If they were to punch each other, who would win that punching competition? Now, I guess it should be noted that in the comics, almost none of the Red Guardians, including Alexei Shostakov, are superpowered. They're merely standard Russian people at their physical Russian best with rigorous and Russian combat training. Changes were obviously made for the movie, but none of the information about what was in the Russian version of the serum is known, although it's almost certainly not the same. In fact, it might be an entirely different formula altogether, seeing as the original was destroyed and then reconstituted somewhat with wildly varying results. But depending on who had what variations and when and who Hydra was working on, it's not implausible that a version made its way over to the Soviet Union. I actually did a video on the timeline of the serum if you do want the specifics of how it evolved. I'll link it below. The Russian mix, though, it bears some of the same traits previously seen, such as increased strength, speed, and durability, but it's somewhat lacking in other areas, because the Steve Rogers version is all of that, along with substantially slowed aging and a super fast metabolism, meaning that he's not even capable of getting drunk on hard liquor. The Alexei Shostakov version in this regard is somewhat lacking. Despite being held captive in a seemingly harsh and resource-limited prison, he managed to gain weight, whilst at the same time his hair began to thin out and grey. I mean, this could also just be a result of hard living and genetics. And I guess also, who knows how old he really is. But we do know with the Steve Rogers version that he can train to increase his physical abilities by boxing up a boxing bag or running rings around a Birdman. But at the same time, it would be quite difficult to get out of shape if the rate he burns alcohol is anything to go by. You would have to be actively and optimally trying to ruin your body under extreme circumstances, probably not available in a remote Russian prison, to gain any kind of ground in this regard. I guess somewhat similar to what Thor did to himself leading up to Endgame. I mean, Red Guardian's decline could also be a result of the potency of the serum fading over time. But what I also find odd is, why is he yet again the only super soldier? I mean, there must have been a number of other people who were tested, but as always, why wasn't the serum again mass-produced? I mean, surely the whole thing wasn't sabotaged with one sole remaining guy yet again. And if this wasn't the case, what would make this guy so special that it would work solely on him? There's not even a hint of anyone else like him in or around the Russian military. But here you go, here's a theory. I guess it's entirely possible that he's a mutant. Maybe what they did give him triggered said mutation, like what happened with Deadpool, or perhaps they didn't even give him anything close to being effective, and his powers manifested as a result of pushing his capabilities. Him being a mutant might also explain why he was locked away, because perhaps like everybody else in the Marvel Universe, the Russians also hate mutants, and they wouldn't want to cop to their biggest and best being a genetic anomaly as opposed to being a result of some kind of Soviet wonder drug. And if he was a mutant and they figured out that they couldn't replicate what he had, well, that means they were left with an unstable, aging wildcard who could very well defect to the States after getting a taste for that life. But look, whatever he is or was in his heyday, he still would have done well, I feel, against Captain America if the fight against Taskmaster was anything to go by. I mean, he was well past his prime at that point. And in regards to who's stronger, the strength level of these two characters, they're just very vague, but it does seem possible from what we see that he's actually stronger. You know, when he flips that thing, he's like, flip! Though without a direct confrontation, it's unlikely that we'll ever know. Now, if you've got another explanation for how they could have met, I'd love to hear it. Even if it's just like, yeah, I made it up. I don't know. Also, a lot of people have been asking whether we're going to be reviewing Black Widow. And the answer is yeah, on our podcast, The Weekly Planet, that comes out every Monday morning, where we talk movies and comics and TV shows. We're going to be all about it, breaking down the good, the bad, the box office numbers, all of it. But if you want, you can head over bigsandwich.co, which is like our own private Patreon, where that podcast is actually going to go up a day early on Sunday, where you can also get early Caravan of Garbage videos, movie audio commentaries, bonus podcasts, and other things probably. Thanks for watching this. I hope you're having a good weekend. I know I am, or at least I hope I am, because I actually recorded this before the weekend, so maybe I'm dead when this goes out. Wouldn't that be something? Let me know if I'm dead. Give me the heads up. All right, goodbye.